Wrestling fans, guys, when we look at old school pay-per-view concepts, what do we think of? What comes to mind? Things that fans look back and think, hey, I have fond memories, fond moments, and watching stuff on this pay-per-view. Man, I want this to come back. This pay-per-view, this concept was awesome. Absolutely awesome growing up. What comes to mind? Backlash, Bad Blood, In Your House. In Your House was one of my favorite concepts, if you want to know the truth. In Your House was one of my favorite concepts because it always had a different pay-per-view name inside the umbrella In Your House. But when we really step back and look at one of the best concepts WWE has created outside of the main four that we see each and every year, one stands above the rest, wrestling fans, and that is the King of the Ring. Something that started before its debut in 1993 on the pay-per-view calendar year. It started on house shows, made its way to the pay-per-view calendar year, stopped, got off the pay-per-view calendar year, went to Raw, and they did it on Raw and things of that nature, and then it just kind of flickered off, and they stopped doing it. Rumors are WWE are going to bring back the King of the Ring. In my eyes, guys, I think it'd be great if WWE put the King of the Ring back on the calendar year. Today, we are going to discuss the 1993 version of the King of the Ring. The year of Bret the Hitman Hart, nonetheless. All that, plus they had the mammoth 550 some odd pounds of Yokozuna taking on Hulk Hogan. They had Crush versus Shawn Michaels. All that plus so much more happened. First things first, though, let's dive into who was on commentary. A great dynamic, to say the least. It was very interesting, to say the least. Macho Man Randy Savage, good old JR, and of course, Bobby the Brain Heenan. Heenan doing his usual bad guy tactic, funny tactic tricks on commentary. Macho Man going ballistic every time there was a good matchup and getting into it with the Brain. And JR just kind of being the neutral person in between them and calling action as well. Great dynamic for the first ever King of the Ring. That was something that WWE should do more often, to say the least. I miss that type of commentary team going back and forth. But nonetheless, let's see what WWE had as far as the opening round, shall we, of the King of the Ring. Bret Hart versus Razor Ramon. Mr. Perfect took on Mr. Hughes. Hacksaw Jim Duggan took on the Beast from the East. Bam Bam Bigelow. And of course, Tatanka took on the narcissist Lex Luger. Guys, it was definitely the year of Bret Hart. You could say the least. 100%, even just looking at this pay-per-view. Bret Hart took on Razor Ramon. A great backstory to this. They faced each other at the Royal Rumble when Bret Hart was WWF champion at the time. Going back to this matchup, nonetheless, great opening encounter. Both men went back and forth. They played up that Bret Hart's hands got stomped on and his back was injured and things of that nature throughout the matchup. If you look at how Bret Hart won this contest, he did it with without using the sharpshooter. As a matter of fact, you will see throughout this entire pay-per-view that he didn't beat in. I mean, he beat everybody without using the sharpshooter, without using his finisher. They were just showing that Bret Hart could use just about anything to defeat anybody in WWE at the time. But Bret Hart beat Razor Ramon by countering a side suplex from the top rope into a pin. 1, 2, 3. Bret Hart victorious and goes to the semifinal rounds. From there, you go to a little package showing what Mr. Hughes did to The Undertaker, stealing the urn and pretty much kind of riding The Undertaker off TV. And, of course, The Undertaker had been in a rivalry with Giant Gonzalez and things of that nature. Mr. Perfect, now you have to realize, this is the king of the ring. And, when we think about the king of the ring, it's wrestling. The best wrestling matches, okay? So, no doubt in my mind, and this isn't the first time I've watched this. I watched this when I was a little kid, but no doubt in my mind, back then, I'd be thinking, man, how is Mr. Perfect going to overcome this? Mr. Hughes is definitely going to win this. Now, looking at it, it's, okay, Mr. Hughes is in a rivalry with The Undertaker. This is about wrestling, though. The best wrestling matches. There's a rivalry, there's a story with Bret Hart versus Mr. Perfect. Of course, Mr. Perfect is going to be victorious because that's the better wrestling matchup. But Mr. Hughes cannot get defeated clean because he's in a rivalry with The Undertaker. So what happens? Mr. Hughes gets disqualified, and that's how Mr. Perfect gets advanced to the semifinal round. Which, honestly, Mr. Hughes waffling him with the urn is a great way to get DQ'd. A great way. Especially showing, again, the effects that using the urn can have. So, I mean, that was a good way. One thing to mention also that WWE did back then that they don't do now, and I wish that they would bring back, is they had Bret Hart during about the middle of the matchup. They had him in a corner in a box talking about who he'd rather face. Would he rather face Mr. Perfect or he'd rather face Mr. Hughes? Mr. Hughes, the more brawling type match, or Mr. Perfect, the wrestling holds. And he said he'd rather face Mr. Perfect because of the wrestling holds and because he liked him a little bit better. Anyway, moving on from there, you got the massive 550 some odd pounds of Yokozuna and Mr. Fuji backstage with an interview with Mean Gene Okerlund. Pretty much these two guys talking to Mean Gene, saying that they're going to destroy Hulk Hogan, take the title back, and America and Hulk Hogan are going to go down, bonsai, yeah. That's pretty much what it was about. Moving on. Go to Beast from the East, Bam Bam Bigelow versus Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Two big behemoths, to say the least, facing each other. And quite frankly, Hacksaw Jim Duggan didn't stand a chance in this. Looking at it now, it's simple. Are you going to have three baby faces win? Of course not. Of course you're not going to have three baby faces win. You're definitely going to have a heel walk out victorious in this. And besides, Bam Bam Bigelow is a more vicious type wrestler anyway. So even if Bret Hart or even no matter if it was Bret Hart or Mr. Perfect won, either one of those, whoever got to the finals, if they had to face Bam Bam Bigelow, that would be a much more brutal matchup for them to overcome than Hacksaw Jim Duggan. No disrespect to Hacksaw Jim Duggan, because I am a big fan of, Tatanka took on Lex Luger. Needless to say, guys, this will, if you go back in time and if you really remember stuff about these two guys, then Tatanka and Lex Luger at the time really hadn't lost or didn't lose at all. Lex Luger being built to take on Yokozuna at SummerSlam that year. He was still a narcissist, but he was about to transition to that American-made, American original Lex Luger with that Call to the Action campaign, all that kind of stuff, with Lex Express stuff. Tatanka, who undefeated and all that kind of good stuff. The undefeated Native American Tatanka. So what are they going to do? Of course, you're not going to have either one of them take a clean 1-2-3 pinfall in the center of the ring, because you're still building both of them up. So what do? A draw. Go the full 15 minutes, because as you know, the King of the Ring, 15 minutes each match in the opening rounds. Both men go to time limit draw, and Bam Bam Bigelow advances to the finals. After that, of course, we go to the semifinal round, which is Bret Hart versus Mr. Perfect, which we had Mean Gene Okerlund backstage going back and forth with Mr. Perfect and Bret Hart. Very interesting dynamic and stuff with these two men talking to Mean Gene, and Mean Gene stirring up the pot, talking about 1991 SummerSlam and talking about their parents and which parent would be better and all that kind of stuff. Stu Hart or Larry the Axe hitting. It was an interesting story to talk before the match. Bret Hart versus Mr. Perfect. Guys, nonetheless, these men went out there and had a barn burner for the semifinal matchup. Bret Hart, of course, went over here, reversed inside cradle for a 1-2-3. You couldn't ask for a better matchup. If you've seen the 1991 SummerSlam matchup, it looked a lot similar to this, but nonetheless, this is still a matchup that I would definitely recommend people to go back and watch. After this, we got to one of the more boring matches. And I don't like saying that because it was for the WWE Championship, but it was exactly what I just said, boring. And that is Yokozuna taking on Hulk Hogan. These guys did not have chemistry at all. It was slow, it was methodical, and there's a difference in having a slow, methodical match and guys having chemistry, and guys having no chemistry at all. And these guys didn't have any chemistry at all, because there was a bear hug that felt like it went on for like 10 minutes. I know I exaggerated that a little bit, but it felt like it went on for half the matchup. So, this match literally just dragged on and on. 11 minutes. This match could have been cut about half and it would have been just fine. But Yokozuna went over here, and what can you say? He went on to have a pretty lengthy title reign, King of the Ring, so that would have been in June, and he held it till March of the following year at WrestleMania 10, where Bret Hart captured the championship from Yokozuna. But moving on with the King of the Ring, we go from that to another kind of downer matchup, because that kind of drained people. That really did. First of all, Yokozuna winning kind of drained people because everybody kind of wanted Hulk Hogan to win in the arena. You could clearly tell that. And, of course, Yokozuna really rode Hulk Hogan off when he did the bonsai drop afterwards on him, squashing him to pieces and all that kind of good stuff that WWE likes to say after things like that happen. But Hulk Hogan got rode off TV and put a real downer on the pay-per-view. But afterwards, we got that 8-man tag, which really just showed that the Steiner brothers were about to take titles off of Money Inc. because you had Money Incorporated and the Head Shrinkers taking on the Steiner brothers and the Smoking Guns. And the Steiner brothers and the Smoking Guns were victorious. Okay. After that, you moved right on into Crush versus Shawn Michaels. Crush didn't stand a chance. Crush did not stand a chance in this matchup whatsoever. Crush was wrapped in a rivalry with Doink at the time. So this was just something for, in my eyes, looking at it at this age. You know, back then I would say, come on, Crush. You know, back then, most of the baby faces, not all of them, but most of them. But back then, I'd say, come on, Crush. Now, no. Crush sucks. Let's go Shawn Michaels. And besides, when you really look at it, Shawn Michaels barely held that title. He's going to have a nice title reign. And Crush is wrapped up in a rivalry with Doink. So the question is, how is Shawn Michaels going to beat Crush in this matchup? Of course, Doink is going to interfere somehow, or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 Doinks, or however many Doinks they had back then, depending on what day it was, because there was always more Doinks coming around. And of course, after that, we had the finals of the King of the Ring, which was Bam Bam Bigelow taking on Bret Hart. Absolutely a fantastic way to end the King of the Ring. Bam Bam Bigelow had an interview with Mean Gene Okerlund saying he's fresh as a daisy, Mean Gene, and he's got an opportunity to become the first King of the Ring, and he's going to go out and get the job done, and all that kind of good stuff. But nonetheless, you know, it really played up the fact that Bret Hart was injured, and the entire match was Bam Bam absolutely brutalizing Bret Hart. But, I mean, he was at some point, Lunas Vachon came and hit Bret Hart with a steel chair, and you got the big headbutt, and 1, 2, 3. But Bam Bam ended up not being King of the Ring because Lunas Vachon interfered. So they restarted the match, and Bret Hart took even more beating. They had a little bit of back and forth, but he took more beating. And finally, he got Bam Bam in a victory roll. And 1, 2, 3, Bret Hart's the King of the Ring. So we go, and we're having the ceremony here. And Jerry Lawler, they set up that rivalry. And this is where I say the WWE used the King of the Ring to rivalries for set up this pay-per-view to set up rivalries in the future and pay-per-views in the future, because Jerry Lawler interferes, attacks Bret Hart, and that sets up for SummerSlam. Needless to say, wrestling fans, King of the Ring 1993, definitely one of the best concepts, best old style pay-per-views WWE has come up with. Tune in for my next edition later on this week. But until I see you again, this is Webby, and I'll catch all of you on the other side. Talk to you later.